This is Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. With me in the studio, I have Professor Bola Akinterinwa, Director General, Bolitag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Well, Professor Akinterinwa, you listened to that hour-long interview with Mrs. Obieze-Kwesili. What's your response to some of the issues she raised, economic, social, and political?
I think Obieze-Kwesili, with her submission today, necessarily constitutes a school of thought that we cannot, as scholars, ignore. A school of thought that is predicated on, let me say, a triangular pillar. The first one is that he explained her experiences in Berlin, the research conducted there on the nexus, relationship between policy and politics. I found that quite interesting. And the argument he posited is that the quality of politics necessarily impacts on, development and policy. And that even though many observers wouldn't bother, they believe that, look, you can make policies, you can adopt policies, ratify policies, ignoring the political dimension, politics, may not augur well for constructive national development. I think that's a very good observation for further research, for further interrogation. She has submitted that from her finding, if we have a high-level quality of politics, then you can expect that there will be good governance. You can expect that policies themselves will be objectively explicated, adopted, and put in practice. The second pillar there, he did talk about monopolistic democracy. When I listened to her, what came to my mind was what Professor John Ayoade, who was on the platform of Arise, Professor Ayoade, a professor emeritus, a sound scholar for that matter, from University of Ibadan, argued that it cannot be rightly said that Nigeria has a federal system, that Nigeria cannot be rightly referred to as a republic. Now we say we are Federal Republic of Nigeria. We say we are a republican system too. But the professor has rightly argued, saying that, look, even if you take a look at the preamble of Nigeria's constitution, we will discover that the elements required to define what a federal system of government should look like, or a republican system, is not there. So when Obi talked about monopolistic democracy, and I remembered what Professor Ayoade said, what agitated me already is that, do we even really have democracy? But from the various submissions given by the guest speaker, all indications point to the fact that we neither have a federal system nor a republican system, nor even democracy. We don't practice that. And she expatiated very clearly using Yele Showore's case has studied. Now you look at it, for instance, how can you claim that we have a democratic system which is described as monopolistic, when, for instance, the right to protest, basic right to protest, which is a major pillar, major element in any given civilized democracy. Because if we are talking about democracy in Nigeria and we want to admit that we have, then that democracy in Nigeria cannot be said to be civilized. It cannot be the internationally standardized, well-defined democracy in this case. So when you look at that particular point, you cannot demonstrate freely. Then we should not be talking about that. She did the third pillar there. She talked about security. In response to your own question, Ruben, when you ask the question on whether or not Nigeria can be said to be a failed state, whether Nigeria is on the path of a failed state, he clearly explained scientifically too that, look, there is no need for you to ask her directly her own opinion. That if you look at international journals, the parameters for defining what will constitute a failed state.
Or a fragile state.
A fragile state. Now, she gave a number of indices. When you look at that, look at the factor of insecurity. When any given state is unable to secure its own territory, when the territorial integrity of a nation state, of a member state of the international community is threatened, there's a major problem there. And that's the most critical problem we should look at. There are many indices, there are many parameters for defining a fragile state. If, for instance, out of about 140 countries considered, and then Nigeria from the...
Prof, let me come in here before you go further. I mean, I get the point Mrs. Ezekwesili was making about politics, policy, and governance, and the interconnectedness in terms of outcome. Basically, what she's talking about is leadership. Leadership can make all the difference. But if you problematize it further, the question is, how do you produce a new leadership elite in a country where the education system is completely down? Because these new leaders, this leadership cadre, is not going to come from just anywhere. And Nigeria is in a state of emergency with regard to leadership. So I guess it will take time. So do we need to be patient? For how long? And then, of course, there's this other issue in leadership studies about trade-offs. Where do you have that trade-off? I mean, Ato Emokun has written about it. The American economist, Farid Zakaria, has written about it in his study of Asian countries. Now, what level of freedom would say, for example, Nigerians will be willing to give up to be able to achieve the objectives? Ato Emokun was talking about the interface between equality and efficiency. And he raised questions about, okay, are you willing to give up part of your equality, expectations so that you can have an efficient state? Because if you look at some of those Southeast Asian tigers that we often refer to, you see they are not necessarily openly democratic, but they are efficient.
Well, you have answered even the question you are raising. And you have only even buttressed the answers already given by Obi. Obi told us that, look, you need an enlightened and empowered electorate. In other words, the implication of that is that we need to give the proper educational, orientation that will enable a constructive, a good leadership to emerge. We have the youth there. But a youth should not simply be defined by the factor of age. No, useful exuberance can be defined differently. Youth that will be leaders of tomorrow, they will need to be exposed to a patriotic political system. People do not just, it's only in Nigeria someone will join a political party in January and in June is already qualified to contest. What does he know ideologically about the system? So when Obi talked about educating, empowering the electorate, that will go a very long way in laying a good foundation for good leaders to emerge. He talked about constitutional reform as well, that the Electoral Act itself will need to be reviewed. And that in this case, we have a system, you know, our own system, political system in Nigeria, look at it. When somebody offends the law, he or she seeks protection by changing political party. Many people left PDP because of imminent, charges of corruption. They will go and join the political party in power. And then everybody keeps quiet. And everybody is now struggling to become president. Now, the electoral law that enables this, the electoral law that makes anyone to keep quiet, please, this cannot be accepted. Please, there's one point also raised by Obi. He doesn't believe that President Muhammadu Buhari is actually governing. Now, we see it as scholars, that's a hypothetical statement that can be subjected to further inquiries, etc. But as a hypothetical statement in itself, we cannot set it aside. It cannot be thrown into the dustbin of history. The implication there is that we have a president who readily will make, in fact, we must say that the speech, the New Year message in itself, they call it New Year message. But what really is the message communicated? I have a problem with that. Now, when Obi is referring to the person of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, whether or not, well, truly we are a Federal Republic or not, the issue is that when a president will not be able to assert himself and then protect the rule of law, protect the Constitution of Nigeria, on the basis of which he swore on oath to defend, then there's a problem. And since you are talking about leadership, where is leadership? What is leadership? What's the content of leadership if it's not all these things, doing things rightly on the basis of rule of law? When, for instance, NSAS protesters, for protesting, we have financial institutions now attaching their personal accounts. No, please. If there is to be a Federal Republic of Nigeria or Republic of Nigeria, the existence of Federal Republic of Nigeria must be largely predicated on the respect for the Constitution and the law of the land. And that is the issue. And if we deviate from this, what leadership are we going to have? The leaders we are talking about that you have in mind,
anyway,
they are in the same inclement environment of Nigeria.
Prof, I believe certainly that we can spend another hour just discussing Mrs. Obi Ezekwesili's submissions, but I'm sure the conversation around that
yes,
interview
he raised a number of points.
Would also resonate with other Nigerians, those who are watching this interview, this program, and others who may watch it later online. So let's move on. We'll take another short break here on This Day Live, the Sunday talk show. When we return, the program will continue. We'll be right back. As of Saturday, Nigeria had recorded 576 new COVID-19 cases, bringing the total number of infections in the country to 89,164, of which 1,302 persons had sadly died from the disease. Signposting his frustration just before New Year Day, the federal government expressed its helplessness in the face of gross violations of COVID-19 safety protocols, saying the nation's health system was struggling to cope with the increasing number of infections daily. While it projected that January 2021 will be tough in terms of managing the pandemic due to continued safety violations during the holiday season, the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 announced its decision to confiscate over 100 international passports of travelers who evaded the Day 7 post-arrival PCR test requirement. Yesterday, the government made
Our national response is passing through a challenging phase due to the seriousness of the second wave of infections in Nigeria. Our TPR analysis shows that 16 out of every 100 tests carried out are positive. We are also seeing increasing transmission among younger people, and this is not considered good and safe. With effect from 1st of January 2021, the passports of the first 100 passengers that failed to take their Day 7 post-arrival PCR test will be published in the national dailies. These passports, as a deterrent, will also be suspended from the 1st of January until June 2021.
We just faced the worst week since we started responding to this outbreak. We had more cases in Nigeria last week than in any other previous week since the beginning of this outbreak. Just looking at pictures and images and videos from across the country is a very disheartening situation, because it appears that our messaging, our appeals to Nigerians over the last few months have not been heeded. And we have gone ahead with business as usual. Event centers are full, social facilities are full, so it is no surprise that cases are rising. January will be a tough month.
Well, Prof, this was a report from week 52, we're told, with the Presidential Task Force drawing attention to violations of COVID-19 protocols and guidelines, and how this has had a corresponding effect on the sharp rise in infection rates in the country, particularly in the face of the realization that there is now a new COVID-19 mutant variant that has also been observed in Nigeria. Maybe not as deadly as what has been reported in the United Kingdom, in South Africa, and some other parts of the world. In fact, let's be specific, in 23 other parts of the world. But nonetheless, we face a very serious threat here, because people are just carrying on as if life is normal. And the more frightening part of it is that as we moved into the year 2021, there's this perception, this assumption among Nigerians that 2021 automatically means the end of COVID-19. And I think it's important that government continues to remind individuals, groups, communities, that COVID-19 did not disappear with the year 2020, that it is real and is still here with us. And government made good its promise to publish the passport numbers of the first 100 persons that were found to have violated the directive, that when you come into Nigeria, within the first 7 days, you take the PCR test. Some persons have observed that, look, those persons' names should have been provided.
Precisely.
In order to name and shame them. But I guess, government was also trying to play safe. Because when you put names to it, in case there is any mistake there, you could have a lorry load of litigation against you. Other measures that the federal government is also talking about is putting the necessary facilities in place to make sure that persons who present fake PCR test results will also be sanctioned. And also to make sure those persons, 100 persons whose passport numbers have been published, they've been restricted from traveling anywhere between now and June for 6 months. Their passports have been suspended. Do you think that this will help? Because here in Nigeria, unless you apply the big stick, the people may not respect directives, official directives. Although there are persons who also say it's not only in Nigeria, elsewhere in the world. We've seen that it's natural human instinct to want to restrict authority.
You see, honesty can be dishonest. Consequently, we can conveniently talk about dishonest honesty. Government gives the impression that it is going to operate, going to act on the basis of honesty of purpose. But the mere fact, contrary to the explanation of the public that we have given, giving passport numbers of Nigerians who might have infracted at the level of the protocols gives the impression that government actually is not truly serious about dealing with it. If you publish the passport number, what prevents the holder of that particular passport number from prosecuting the government if there is any mistake? So, not putting the name there is a manifestation, is an expression of non-seriousness of purpose. For two major reasons. If the names are attached, included with the numbers, then people who know them, that these people might be carriers of COVID-19. So they will take precaution, they will be careful. But if I see a number and I cannot identify the holder, I can freely mix with such an individual. The mere fact that to put a face mask is not in itself a perfect antidote, to being infected. But because of the non-seriousness of purpose of government, in order to just give impression that it is doing something concrete, please, they gave passport numbers. That's not enough. It doesn't tell me anything serious. The second point is that government has easily forgotten that many people have a dual citizenship. What is the big deal you attach a Nigerian passport? What prevents them from traveling out with another passport? Even if you think that you have computerized their signatures, their photographs in your system, to what extent can we talk about patriotism at the level of the security border agents?
Well, Prof.
Anybody can easily...
Prof, you cannot be more correct in your own language. But I think part of it that many Nigerians have expressed concern about is the fact that the measures taken so far do not address corruption within the system.
I'm coming to that, yes.
Okay.
That's why I'm talking about security border agents. To what extent are they patriotic? Whenever there are coup d'etats in Nigeria, how do they get out? They go out through Seme, by land. The borders are porous. So in this case, it's a question of settling the immigration officers, custom officers, all along. Didn't we close the border with the Benin Republic? By the time you close borders, that's when you have heightened underground economic activities going on.
It becomes an incentive.
Of course. When we had lockdown, COVID-19 first wave, lockdown, that was the time you have more movement of vehicles within the country. So it is when you outlaw an activity that you will now see is manifestations in different forms.
But Prof, is there something suicidal in the Nigerian DNA? Because you will recall that even with the directives, that people should not observe crossover services, people should not move around because of the curfew that was imposed by the federal government, during the last moments of the year 2020. In many places across the country, people defied it. People still believe that COVID-19 does not exist, or they believe that it's a foreign affliction. Now, the attitude of the people is part of the problem. If this publication of the passport numbers of certain persons is a step, a first step, maybe we should be asking government to take more steps, to impose more sanctions. Don't you think so?
You see, there's one British saying, according to which, show me your friend, and I will tell you whom you are. That is from the science of physiognomy. You see, I wouldn't share your argument that it's a problem of DNA, something peculiar to the Nigerian. The simple fact is that Nigerians do have eyes that do see. Eyes that do see. For instance, in Nigeria, we're talking about COVID-19.
Well, Prof, hold your thoughts on that. Let's take another quick commercial break. When we return, you have the opportunity to complete your thoughts. Please stay with us. Don't go away. We'll be right back. It's still This Day Live, the Sunday talk show. Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Still with me, I have Professor Bola Akinterinwa, Director General, Bolitag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Well, Prof, the point I was making about whether Nigerians are suicidal is that we've seen, many Nigerians who do not care about their own lives and who do not care about the lives of others. Okay, maybe you have a right to put your own life at risk, but do you have the right to endanger the lives of other Nigerians? And that's why I've been advocating for greater sanctions. But even in some of the states where sanctions have been promised, at the end of the day, we've seen even the state government coming back to say, well, we didn't quite say we will sanction people. If we don't sanction people, they will not obey the guidelines and the protocols.
You touched on the point I was trying to address, that Nigerians have eyes that do see. What do they see? These same constitutive states of Nigeria, do they respect the protocols? They don't. Because the governments that should be sanctioning are not doing so. So a wrong impression, a wrong signal is now sent to the people that, look, the federal government at the end of the day may not be telling us the truth. The government of Nigeria is preaching the sermon of non-corruption. And you see many public officials, government officials, frolicking around with corruption, garment of corruption. So why will you now tell a Nigerian not to steal, not to engage in it, when those who are put in place, for instance, to monitor, to cross-check, to prevent, to deter corruption, are engaged in that? You now come to the issue of COVID-19 protocol. You talked about churches not respecting that. When they see the government itself, government officials not respecting, not sanctioning, so no matter how biblical your sermon can be, please, It reminds me, it was Victor Wifo. In a song, he said, do what I say, but not what I do.
No, Prof, you are absolutely correct. We had a state governor on the morning show, one of the programs on Arise TV. And we asked him, we said, look, how are you managing the COVID-19 situation in your state? We saw you attending a rally, and most of the people around you were not wearing a mask, and you are just, survived COVID-19. He said, well, he's a politician, and as a politician, there's no way you could push the people away from him, at the risk of your own life, and and also, endangering the lives of others. And if you go to government offices, you find that civil servants, before a particular grade was asked to stay at home, you don't find at government secretariats across the states people wearing masks. Nobody was enforcing it. So if that is the case, then you are right. The ordinary people will say the same politicians, the same civil servants who are processing COVID-19 protocols and guidelines, they themselves are not respecting those guidelines. So perhaps it means that this is not a serious message. So the responsibility that the Presidential Task Force talks about is at various levels, both government, leadership, and then the followership.
You made a good observation in terms of the new variant of COVID-19. I actually support taking more serious sanctionary measures against people who refuse, consciously or otherwise, to comply with the protocol. I do not have any qualms with that. But the critical point there is that the PTF, we need to educate the people of Nigeria on the character of the new variant, because 3 points have been identified on concerning these the second wave or the new variant of COVID-19. It is said that the current COVID-19 we do have, even though it's not yet generalized in Nigeria, people are not feeling it, is deadlier than the one we had during the first wave. It's more deadly. It is said that it is faster than the first COVID-19 in terms of infection. So it infects very rapidly. It's just like acting in high velocity.
It has a faster transmissibility rate.
And more importantly, it is argued that in terms of its viral, load, it is very, very heavy. Heavier than the one we have been used to. If we do agree that prevention is better than cure, we need not wait until we have manifestations of this new variant of COVID-19.
Well, in any case, the Nigerian Medical Association is protesting that many of its members are dying. Frontline health workers have been affected.
No insurance.
They are overstretched. Doctors are also protesting that too many patients are presenting cases. In Lagos alone, over 4,000 persons are under home care for COVID-19. So the pandemic is here, is real, and we can just only join government in appealing to the people to take responsibility, and for the state governments who have also been accused by the Presidential Task Force of abandoning their responsibilities to wake up in terms of testing, in terms of contact tracing, and in terms of enforcing their own laws.
Government is talking about vaccines, acquisition of vaccines here and there. The issue of this diplomacy of vaccine itself has become controversial. Now investing a lot of money in acquiring vaccines that many people, that increasing number of scientists the world over are now saying that, look, there is a political agenda surrounding this. We need to be more cautious. Some Nigerian medical practitioners, scientists, yesterday's newspapers all along, are now also cautioning that, look, there is the need to be more careful. So if the doctors themselves are on the front line and are dying, then there is the need to sit down.
Which is why the controversy over whether there should be clinical trials of vaccines when we eventually get a consignment or not is unnecessary. Nigeria, whatever vaccines we get, we must double check. But let's move on to the next story. January 1st marked a historic day on the African continent as the African Continental Free Trade Area officially embarked on its trading phase, marking the realization of a dream conceived in 1963 during the establishment of the Organization of African Unity, now the African Union. On that day, African capitals from east to west and north to south broke decades of economic isolation by embracing unhindered trade access and integration. The African Continental Free Trade Area was signed at the 10th Extraordinary Summit of the AU Assembly on the 21st of March 2018 in Kigali, Rwanda, and came into force on the 30th of May 2019. The AfCFTA is the continent's most ambitious trade and integration initiative aimed at creating collective wealth on the continent and lifting Africans out of the poverty bracket. There are, however, concerns about Nigeria's readiness to take advantage of the trade deal as a result of lingering challenges, especially as it relates to the country's competitiveness, border control, and customs procedures. While the AfCFTA serves as an avenue for local industries in Nigeria to penetrate new markets and establish strong cross-border supply chains with other African countries, it also poses new competitiveness risks for many firms. Although the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Mr. Niyi Adebayo, has claimed that the AfCFTA complements Nigeria's export diversification aspirations, as it will provide preferential market access for Nigerian products and services in the vast African market. The country's exports continue to be dominated by oil, while regional trade has been hobbled by the border closure. Well, Prof, the African Free Continental Trade Agreement has been on the table, as I said, since 1960. After that 1960 promise of integration, collaboration, then you had the Lagos Plan of Action, then you had the Abuja Treaty, then the event in Kigali, and then, of course, the ratification. 54 out of the 55 countries in Africa are part of it. They signed the agreement. The sole exception is Eritrea. And as we speak, 34 countries have already ratified, including Nigeria. It kicked off on January 1. The question is Nigeria in a strong position to take advantage of it? The same question I posed to Mrs. Obieze-Kwesili. And I asked that question because of the challenges we have in terms of infrastructure, border control, customs union, and all the other issues in terms of our capacity to compete. What do you think?
Let's begin with an objective evaluation of the agreement itself. It raises a serious conflict of interest at the level of the African Continental Free Trade Association Agreement on the one hand, and the EU Partnership Agreement with many African countries, SADC in particular, and the ECOWAS. Conflict of interest, how? The Economic Partnership Agreement done by the European Union and the ECOWAS. The agreement between the EU and West Africa. The agreement between the EU and the West African Economic and Monetary Union, the French
yes.
UMO. Now, there are three agreements in one. So we must not confuse the EU-ECOWAS agreement. The EU-ECOWAS agreement necessarily excludes Mauritania. Mauritania used to be a member of the ECOWAS, but when it withdrew its membership from the regional organization, and the European Union does not want to exclude Mauritania. So they now have another agreement essentially predicated on the same spirit, it has virtually the same provisions. They call it West Africa in order to include Mauritania. And then they also have the French version. Now, the cardinal objective of the European Partnership, EU Partnership Agreement with the ECOWAS, West Africa, and the West African Economic and Monetary Union is have a free trade area. When we talk about free trade area, it simply means removal of tariff and non-tariff barriers. That's basically the issue.
Well, this particular AfCFTA is removing tariffs on about 90% of
yes, I'm coming to
goods
that.
to be treated.
Yes, but you see, your question now is to see the extent to which, for instance, whether Nigeria is ready, whether we'll be able to cope with that. Obi Ezekwesili already made a number of relevant points that, look, the African environment is at best inclement. And that is very true. The issue is that in Africa, Nigeria is not ready. Many African countries are also not ready. Because when we are talking about free trade area, non-tariff, tariff barriers, removing them, the customs, organizations, agencies in the various countries, they are not ready. Even someone drew the attention of the opening of the borders with Benin Republic, for instance, since more than 2 weeks. But when you go there on ground, the difficulties is manifest. So the immigration...
Prof, if you could just hold your thoughts. I know it's quite a big subject. There are many things we can explore. But let's take another quick commercial break. When we return, the conversation will continue. Please stay with us. Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Professor Bola Akinterinwa is still here. Professor Akinterinwa, yes, you were talking about the African Free Continental Trade Agreement.
Yes, I was talking about the environmental conditionings of the agreement. I was saying that the African environment, at best, is inclement. And I was trying to justify that one by many points. There is much dependence, of African economies on commodities. We are engaged in commodity production and exports. What is it that will be traded? What Nigeria is going to trade on?
Goods and services.
Goods and services, yes, but it's common to all of them. So if the minister, Adebayo, is saying that, it's going to complement the economy, etc., that is already, if the competitiveness factor is already there. We don't have.
Well, secondly, it's given that, all these economies that will be involved in this, they are unequal. So how does each country protect its own interests, particularly a country like Nigeria? Our borders are porous. They've been so forever. They are not automated, right? Will Nigeria become a dumping ground from goods from Francophone countries? We have challenges of transportation. We have challenges of power. We have challenges of, even information systems. But all of these problems that we identify, do they detract away from the noble principles of the agreement itself? Not many people will agree that they detract from those principles.
Dr. Abati. I consciously say Dr. Abati because whoever is described as a doctor, not MBBS, means that he's a holder of a degree in philosophy, philosophizing. What is different from what is ideal. I'm not interested in what is ideal. All the arguments so far and that we are trying to sustain, all these arguments fall within the framework of what is ideal. But what is on ground, the situational reality on ground, does not lend any credence to justify what is ideal. For instance, we have infrastructure deficit on ground. The transportation system within Africa is a major problem. Now, when we are talking about inequality, that the countries involved, their economies are not equal, we agree. But the issue is that when you are only going to export primary products, if you are not going to have manufactured goods that will go to Africa, and we are talking about Nigeria being dumping ground, there's no way it will not be a dumping ground. And in this case, let me just conclude by telling you the politics of Morocco trying to join the Economic Community of West African States. It is simply because it has become very difficult for European American countries, businesses, to have their goods exported directly to Nigeria. And now, because of the principle of rule of origin, which also makes it difficult, they now want to go through Morocco, let Morocco become a member, then it will be channeled to Morocco, then to the ECOWAS region.
Well, Prof,
and this is the issue.
Maybe the thing to worry about is how all of these challenges, all of these loopholes, omissions, could become a basis for countries involved in this new arrangement for integration and cooperation and intra-African trade to scale up, to fill the gaps in their countries. If Nigeria does not want to become a dumping ground, maybe we'll take the situation at our borders serious. If we want to compete, then we'll address those issues over time. It's a journey. It's a process. It's not something that will happen overnight. And Nigeria should be part of that journey. This time you cannot
be more correct. Yes.
Well, on that note, Prof, let's move on to our last topic of the day. Just as the African continent ushered in a new free trade era, the United Kingdom formerly left the European Union's economic and political orbit in an historic departure that has split Britain politically and marked the country's greatest shift on the global stage in modern times after a 48-year liaison. While supporters claim the move will set the country free to pursue new opportunities as an independent global power, critics are concerned that it will reverse decades of integration with its closest neighbors and threatens to break up the UK, harming the country's economy and diminishing its international standing. This move marks the UK walking away from almost half a century of membership, resulting in changes to everything from pet passports and driving license rules for the British in Europe to data rules. The new travel and trade rules, reached after nearly a year of negotiations, came into effect on January 1, concluding a saga that divided Britain and dominated politics. It also marked the end of free movement of people between Britain and the European Union.
Good. Well, thank you very much, everybody. And I want everybody to understand that the treaty that I've just signed is not the end. It is a new beginning, and I think the beginning of what will be a wonderful relationship between the UK and our friends and partners in the European Union. I'm delighted to welcome with us today in number 10. Here it is, folks. This is it.
Well, Prof, the truth is that the United Kingdom is now living with the reality of life outside the European Union. As we speak, quite a number of lorries are held up at the border control post in Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland, food products being taken from Northern Ireland to Europe. And the problem is about documentation. Even at the airports, travelers are beginning to get used to the new reality. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Tony Blair, after about 48 hours, says the freedom that the United Kingdom is seeking from the European Union is not real after all, given these disruptions that the people of the United Kingdom are now confronted with. But it is a reality that the UK has now left the European Union. And there are implications from the Erasmus scholarship, which the UK cannot be part of again, to trade and aid, to transport services, even television services, even free movement an opportunity to work in Europe for people of the United Kingdom. So much that the father of the prime minister is saying he will go and get a French passport. His mother and his grandmother having been originally French.
You see, the beauty in the whole exercise is simply about the extent to which regional integration, all right, can be a sustainable, instrument of growth and development. The concept of regional integration came into being during the quest for development. How can we fast track development? And when you begin to look at it, even from the African perspective, if you want to look at the June 1991 Abuja Treaty establishing the African Economic Community, you will see that Article 1, Paragraph D, Article 1, Paragraph E, specifically reconceptualized, completely redefined the UN definition of Africa as a region. Why? Simply because of the need to fast-track integration. So, the Abuja Treaty defined Africa into 5 regions, in the belief that if each of the regions is able to integrate their policies, their services, it will be better, it will be easier for the whole continent to be integrated. It is exactly the same spirit. We borrow the spirit even from the European Union. The European effort at integration started as far back, let me say, as far back as 1951, with the establishment of the 2 European communities, iron and steel, defense. Before it got to 1957, March 25, Rome Treaty, establishing the European of Seas. So, by the time they started this, they excluded Britain. Britain was not part of it, was not part of European of Seas. Charles de Gaulle of France prevented the admission of Britain. It was not until January 1, 1973, when Charles de Gaulle was no longer on the scene, that Britain was admitted. So when we now look at the exit again of Britain from it, what is actually happening? The extent to which one will lose his or her identity within the framework of community citizenship integration. I don't really subscribe to that. I am a Nigerian. I do not want to be an American. I do not want to be a South African. I do not want to be a Ghanaian. There is beauty in being a Nigerian, regardless of all the atrocities, recklessness we may have in the country. I like it as a Nigerian. So when you now want to bring the Luxembourgeois, the Germans, the French, the people of Netherlands, you now want to evolve a common culture. It's not easy. And the beauty of it all, the British, for instance, do not want to lose the fact that the pound sterling is an instrument of international negotiation in international business. The British do not want to lose the fact that they are driving left. Well, all the international community is right. So the British still believe that they are at the epicenter of industrial revolution. So there is prestige, pride in certain things.
Yes, I mean, that's the whole point about Brexit, isn't it? Nationalism. But of course, now the reality of life outside the EU is what the people of the United Kingdom will have to deal with. And we'll keep a watching brief on developments in Europe and the United Kingdom in particular. You've been watching This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati from my entire team here in Lagos. It's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching.